One of the most fundamental cognitive skills is judgment, or the human brain's ability to draw conclusions about the world. Sometimes the brain draws accurate conclusions, and other times it draws inaccurate conclusions that lead to mistakes and decisions. The ability to improve the accuracy of judgment with effort and practice is what makes it a cognitive skill, and several techniques can be applied to improving the accuracy of conclusions, which we look at later in this video. Because judgment is one of the most fundamental cognitive abilities, it's also a root cause of many problems. To understand why, it helps to understand how the brain draws conclusions about reality. Consciousness, as it is defined in my work, is the human brain's ability to construct a mental representation of reality. Those mental representations are often called mental models or world models. When the brain recollects a memory, it reconstructs a mental model of the experience from memory. The brain is also capable of modeling ideas, theories, and imaginary things. When the brain makes a judgment about something in the world, it relies on those mental models to draw a conclusion. When those mental models accurately represent reality, those conclusions are accurate, and when they don't, it makes mistakes. Part of the problem with human judgment is that the human brain is simply not capable of knowing everything. And the problem with mental models, generally speaking, is that they tend to have missing or inaccurate information. So relying on those models may lead to wrong conclusions. How people handle uncertainty is one of the most common causes of bad judgment. Very often, people are confronted by circumstances that have unknown or uncertain details. And the question is, how does a person handle those unknowns? Does the individual make a guess, form a belief, or speculate about those unknowns?
Do you believe
You don't know
that?
what you're
No
talking
way.
about.
I don't
lying.
believe you.
I can tell.
Since all of those are mental creations that don't accurately represent reality, those conclusions will also be wrong. This doesn't mean that all speculation, assumptions, or beliefs should be avoided. It's necessary to do that when problem solving, being creative, or when reducing uncertainty in a conclusion. But when drawing a final conclusion, it's important to rely on what is known to be true. If you don't know something, then say you don't know. That's an accurate statement, no harm done, no mistake made. Nevertheless, bad judgment and wrong conclusions are a root cause of all bad behavior. To understand why, consider the fact that inaccurate conclusions or inaccurate statements often fall into the category of lies, deception, delusions, false accusations, denying responsibility, or having false beliefs. All of these tend to be trust-losing behaviors. So why are people so compelled to speculate, make assumptions, and form beliefs when they draw conclusions about things or people they know little about? The answer to that question has to do with how the brain makes decisions, and the reason decision-making skills are necessary in the first place. The human brain has two different systems, a fast and automatic system for instincts, emotions, and habits, and a slower and more deliberate system for thinking, strategizing, and problem-solving. Daniel Kahneman, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, proposed that these thinking systems could be called System 1 and System 2, and this has gained greater acceptance for a number of reasons. Previously, psychologists may have divided these systems into the limbic system and the cerebral cortex. The limbic system is a primitive part of the brain that controls instincts and emotions, and the cerebral cortex is a part of the brain believed to be capable of modeling complex ideas, strategizing, and deliberate thinking. But the way these systems actually operate is in a tight feedback loop, so they don't entirely operate independently, just as cognitive abilities don't entirely operate independently. So sometimes people make decisions based more on instincts and emotions, and other times they make decisions based more on knowledge and reason. Both systems are essential to human survival and motivation. To understand the value of instincts, suppose you are running late to an appointment. The prospect of being late to your appointment evokes fear and anxiety, which motivates you to move faster. This is a common example of how instincts help people to make better decisions. However, instincts and emotions also lead to some very irrational behavior. Consider someone who is late to an appointment. It's certainly rational to fear being late to an appointment, but driving 100 miles an hour down the highway and putting other drivers' lives at risk is very irrational behavior. A more rational decision would be to pull over, make a phone call, and explain the situation. In these circumstances, it's better to rely on knowledge and reason instead of instincts and emotions. But unlike instincts and emotions, which are automatic and hardwired into the human anatomy at birth, knowledge has to be accumulated during the course of a lifetime. So that part of the brain requires effort and takes time to develop. In fact, one of the reasons why decision-making skills are necessary is so that people know how to rely on knowledge and reason, instead of exclusively relying on instincts and emotions, especially when making highly consequential decisions. Less intelligent life forms, such as dogs, rely almost exclusively on instincts and emotions, in addition to a type of sensory knowledge. When confronted by a stranger, a dog may begin barking not because the dog knows the stranger is a threat, but because the dog fears the stranger may be a threat. Unfortunately, many people are like the barking dog when they handle everyday circumstances. They have fears and false beliefs, and sometimes attack the character of other people, not because they know they are doing something wrong, but because they fear they are doing something wrong. Because the barking dog lacks knowledge of right and wrong, it may attack and bite the stranger. But humans, in contrast, are able to eat from the tree of knowledge and know with certainty the difference between right and wrong to make moral and ethical choices. In fact, it's not possible to have a conscience or distinguish between right and wrong or make moral and ethical choices without the ability to rely on truth and knowledge. The problem is, when people use poor judgment, they tend to draw conclusions based on instincts and emotions, and that can lead to a lot of friction in their relationships and a lot of regrettable mistakes. To improve your judgment, practice the following techniques. 1. Stick to what you know for certain. And 2. If you don't know, suspend judgment until you have better information. The ability to suspend judgment by itself prevents many impulsive behaviors and poor choices. It's not uncommon for a person to get a negative vibe about someone and then attack that person's character. Being able to suspend judgment until more is known about the person can prevent many of those senseless attacks. These very simple but low-effort choices will help you to draw more accurate conclusions on a more consistent basis. However, sometimes instead of ignoring the unknown, it's necessary to fill in those missing details, and that's where thinking skills come into play. Thinking skills reduce uncertainty by applying various techniques to discover the truth when the truth is unknown, and thinking skills is the topic of another video. Thank you for watching this video. These topics and many more can be found in my recent book entitled Decision-Making Skills, a guide to handling uncertainty, driving results, and cultivating well-being.